y'all. Thank you all so much for tuning into episode 8 of Talk to Not At. For those who are new, I'm your host, Abby, and the show is produced by the Debate Boutique Network. Now, if you're just tuning in like this your first episode, you are jumping into part 3 of a 3-part series on colorism and texturism. So real quick, let me plug the episode from last week and the week before, episode 6 and 7, because they really lay the foundation for the conversation that we're having today. But basically, we've been going over, the ways that different Black women who have lighter skin privilege may present themselves in a way that is very privileged, very telling that they're not educated about colorism, and taking up too much space. So we kind of, used a conversation about the YouTuber Brianna Monique and an episode she had done on YouTube as a gateway into this conversation. And then last week, I really came to y'all with like some of my personal experiences, my own accountability, my own journey to recognizing the ways that I need to become more accountable when it comes to having lighter skin privilege, having the conversation of colorism and texturism. And I really wanted to make sure that we recognize that a journey is not always cute. When it comes to learning, when it comes to engaging, when it comes to being accountable, that doesn't mean that you're born getting it. And that doesn't just apply to the conversation of colorism and texturism, right? Any different positionality, even your own positionality, there's a process that comes with learning. There's a process that comes with being accountable. So I really want to make sure, we are open when we're having these conversations. We're open to the idea that, listen, there may be some hard moments, but I need to be brutally honest with myself, because if I'm not honest with myself, then there's no possibility for growth to happen. And trust me, y'all, when the growth happens, the blessings that come your way, it's so much better. But rather than just sitting here and kind of, following the traditional spiel that we kind of go through every episode, right? Where we first update ourselves as to what's going on and then upload ourselves and talk about what's up next. I guess the update is really just like, okay, we've talked about colorism, we've talked about the issues, we've talked about the fact that lighter skinned women are not necessarily, it's not a trend for lighter skinned women to be accountable. It's not a trend for us to sit here and educate ourselves. And that's an issue. The bar is very low and we're not meeting it. So rather than just updating ourselves, we've kind of updated ourselves the past 2 episodes. We're really going to jump into the uploading ourselves. So before we kick off this next portion of our conversation, right, which, side note, y'all, we gonna have Jazmine back today. I'm so excited because episode 1, she really blessed us with some knowledge, some experience, some education, and I'm so excited to have her back on the show with us this week. But before we, jump into this conversation about different experiences of Blackness, I really want us to take a moment, and when we're breathing, right, we're not going to put something on the screen for us to sit here and watch. We're not going to put a quote up for us to read. We're going to give us the space to think about our relationship to the topic of colorism and texturism, right? Not just a superficial level, but dig deep. And when I say dig deep, I mean if you need to pause the video, then pause the video, because now's the time for us to really reflect on ourselves, on our experiences, and to realize, okay, do I need to be more accountable in a certain area? Do I think of certain things, certain moments, certain times in my life when colorism and texturism may become something that was more apparent? What is it that I want to get out of this conversation? Because the whole goal is that this episode, we really get into the different experiences of Blackness. Because again, I say this so much, y'all, Blackness is not a monolithic conversation. But we're really going to get into the different experiences of Blackness, and we're going to use colorism and texturism to help frame the conversation about it, because we can't talk about differences in experiences without talking about colorism and texturism. So for you personally, as we all take this moment and breathe, think about your experiences, your relationship to the topic, because Lord knows I'm about to do the same. So take a moment, y'all, and breathe. Okay, y'all, I hope we all had a moment to just breathe, to really upload ourselves into this conversation and really reflect on our own experiences, our own positionality, our relationship to this topic, and especially if we're people who are in the position where we need to work on our accountability. You know, the whole point of this 3-part series is so that way, one, we can discuss like the different ways that Black women experience their lives or their lived reality, right? The different ways that anti-Blackness targets us, but really to focus on colorism and texturism, and to talk about like intercommunal relationships and the need that we have for lighter skinned women to be accountable for certain privileges that they may have. So we want to make sure that, you know, again, we opened our minds up to being in a position where we can be accountable, but then we're also ready to be like, okay, let's talk about these different experiences. Let's talk about some different, you know, things that we may experience during our lives, which is why on this episode, I am so excited that we have Jazmine coming back to join us for another guest co-host, right? To talk about the different experiences that different Black women coming from different positionalities have when it comes to the conversation of colorism. So at this point, I want to say, hey, Jazmine, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate you being here because y'all, if y'all have not seen episode 1 yet, I don't know what y'all are waiting for because Jazmine blessed us with this knowledge and I am ready for more of it. So thank you so much for joining us again.
Abby makes me look really good. So it makes it real easy. But yeah, I'm excited to be back on this side of the camera. Yeah, for those of you who did not watch that first episode, I will reintroduce myself. And when I did introduce myself, I said, be easy. Because once again, I'm not in front of a camera for most of these things. So, you know, I come as I am. And that's really just that because a lady is busy. I use a different language, but you know, y'all feel me. A lady is busy.
Yes, I'm so sorry, y'all, to plug her business. She's in LA right now. Okay, look at this skyline. Okay, talking about busy. Yes, our girl is out here traveling. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, I'm blessed, and I'm love that I can do literally my job from anywhere in the world. So for anyone who like that is what they're looking for in life, do it or work towards it. It hits different. But I am the owner of the Debate Boutique Network, and specifically for Talk to Not app, the producer, which is always a fun time to put together these visions that Abby has for the conversations each week. So in terms of just like, who am I? That's what I am. In terms of the conversation, that if you missed it, pause and head back. A Black woman who has thoughts and experiences on, as we all do who are Black women, have experiences with colorism and how it has affected us, psychically, socially, all of the different things. So we, Abby and I, agreed this was an important conversation that could not have been just one part, but rather 3 parts for a variety of reasons. But the main one is so that y'all can understand where we're coming from and to understand the politics of the people who are talking to y'all every single week. Like, you're gonna, all right, so what we understand that y'all can talk every day about, these topics, but what are your, relationships to these topics? What are y'all's kind of like differences? And what is the makeup of the Debate Boutique Network / TTNA? And that's what this is. So I'm excited for part 3, episode 8. Still wild to me that we out here.
I know, episode 8, and really each time we do another episode, I think the success and the challenges become more telling, because I know we had a side conversation about some of these comments, okay, that people want to be dropping on these videos. So last week, y'all, we kind of plugged it in episode 2, but yeah, Jazmine, I don't get it. I'm sitting here, we talking, we're dropping knowledge. And did you watch the episode? Because why did you comment that you think colorism and texturism is cute?
Analytics would show that the ignorant folks are not watching the video. They are reacting to the thumbnail. And
yeah,
as I will always say, reading is fundamental.
Yeah.
So if you ain't gonna read and listen to the things that are being said, I have nothing for your thumbnail reaction thoughts. But thanks for the engagement. Like, thanks, love. That was a view.
Right. It goes into the algorithm.
Thank you for disliking. That was also like, that's what I don't understand. What people don't understand with this is that if you dislike the video, that is still engagement. That still pushes the videos into the algorithm. So if you are that passionate about being mad and saying why we shouldn't be talking about certain topics, or the plethora of very colorful words that have been said during this time, then why are you clicking on the video? I've never understood that. I've never understood that, but thank you. Because you are doing what you don't want to do, and that is support.
Right. And on that note, speaking of, different people coming from different positions, let's get into it, right? Today is all about talking about different experiences. So, I guess our first episode, we really got to talk about the ways that the Brianna Monique video kind of impacted the community, right? Darker skinned Black women, lighter skinned Black women, ways that different people responded to her, really disgraceful and inappropriate comments that she made talking about texturism and colorism. But I guess this week we're trying to just get a little more personable, right? Talking about how Jazmine said, how do we relate to these experiences, right? Who are the faces behind this show? What are some of the things that, we've grown up with? So I guess, Jazmine, just to get into it, would you be open to sharing some of your experiences with colorism growing up? How did you relate to the topic? What was your, did it impact you? Was it something that growing up was there a point in your life, right? This moment that you're oh, this is a thing? Or was it just something that was always in the background? I don't know how to better word the question, but
yeah,
you.
Right. Yeah, I have, a lot of thoughts, not even just thoughts, but just like when preparing for this episode, it did have me have to look back and think back about a younger version of myself. And there's the version where I'm honest, and there's the version where I look back and go and say some more prophetic, really powerful stuff. Yeah, I'm not choosing that route. I'm choosing the very kind of honest, what were the kind of childhood thoughts in relationship to anti-Blackness and colorism. And this is something that I think a lot of Black women can relate to in terms of like the schooling system, right? For like, if you're not, like the lottery system in terms of your ability to go to certain schools if you live far away or further away than the district that the school is in. And so, if you win, but like that basically is what it is, the lottery system, you're able to go to these predominantly, white, privileged, resource affluent schools, and experience kind of new social kind of structure that was very different than the neighborhoods, that I lived in. And that's like not shitting on the neighborhoods at all that I come from, because like they are part of what made me, but also too, there's a lot of love in the places that I'm from. But that is really where I felt my Blackness. And wanted to hide it from all things, attraction, all things hair, all things just like thinking about other Black people. And I think that I touched on this kind of in the previous episode, but I had a very, very fear-based politics towards Blackness. I didn't want no part of it. I didn't want no part of the stereotype of being Black, and that stereotype being that other Black folks aren't smart, or Black folks don't know how to read, or Black folks can only rap, or Black folks come from the hood, or Black, all of these different things. I had a very personal fear to being attributed to. I did not want any of my white peers saying, oh, Jazmine's like that. And so that very much so structured how I chose my friends, right? And also what I showed my friends. Kind of going back to a childhood memory when I had my 11th birthday or my 10th birthday, whenever the High School Musical 3 movie came out. And I had a but a moment where my friends from that school came over to my home, and I was so stressed. So stressed, because I didn't know how they were going to feel about my home. I didn't know how they were going to feel about being around the Black people. I just didn't know. And so I really put a 10 on the performance that my family could do to make it look as wonderful to these kids, from my perception, who had it all. So there was a lot of just self-hatred around, and wanting to hide what it meant for me to be a Black girl, and not wanting my peers to see that, but having instances during school where it was very clear that they saw it, and I was very uncomfortable by it. I was like, oh crap, they figured out that, almost like, oh crap, they figured out that I'm Black, when very clearly I was not, tricking anybody of my Blackness. I think I was the only Black girl or two Black girls, in my classes. So it was never that, but I always wanted to, fit in. And kind of when we get to kind of the conversation of colorism, where this plays out to me is that I am not like a dark-skinned Black woman, right? Like darker, like there is darker shades than me. And I had a lot of propensity or a desire to distance myself from darker skinned Black folks while I was in school, because my fear was that was going to bleed into me, that was going to make the room too Black, or that was going to make it where folks like, oh, the Black kids are doing. And so I just had a large association of You put my black with their black, it makes it super black. And I don't want that to be what it's seen. And so it meant that a lot of darker black skinned folks, and also just other black students, if ever I had, a classmate I was really not trying to talk to him. Or I was, if we did talk, it was the black kids who we all cringe at now in 2021, who like to pretend like, what's up, bro? Like, let's talk like we're not, like, let's talk like we're just like Tom, Jill, and Chad. It'd be right. That kind of, well, we're both in the Kool-Aid sauce of not really being black. We the cool blacks. We the smart ones. Because that was a whole other thing. I loved being an oh Lord, the Oreo, right? Like those were things that were said to me, right? Like, you are an Oreo, Jazmine. Like, you're so smart. You're a different kind of black person. And I really celebrated that. I celebrated being a different kind of black person. And so therefore I put blackness on my back. And that's why there was never like a full abandonment of my blackness, but rather I am the corrective to blackness. I'm an example of blackness being good, right? But having to then also say that there are certain aspects of blackness that are bad or that I don't want to associate with, so that I could fit in. I really carried that from 5th grade all the way up until my senior year of high school. Definitely my senior year of high school. And that's where debate has a large role to play with that, since, the Debate Fatigue Network probably is important to kind of unpack how that began to shape an actual recognition of that's not okay. Because I really try to think back. When did I have a true analysis encounter thinking of my blackness? Like, really, when did I do that? Because from, like I said, 5th grade to 11th grade, I gave all of the transgressions looking back, and also feeling them when I was younger as transgressions, but I wasn't thinking of them that way. I was just like, he doesn't date black girls. That's just like, he says, the kids say that openly, they just don't date black girls. I'm an Oreo. Yeah, I'm smart. I'm not taking those statements as being racially charged or as being anti-black, or I'm not even thinking about me not being friends with, darker skinned black folks as being colorist. I just am not thinking of it that way. I'm thinking of it in terms of survival mode. How can I, just survive my own blackness without having to use my blackness as my thing. Because I never wanted to get anything because I was black. And that's, where debate opened up my eyes to, well, that's not when we say black excellence, or when we're talking about affirming black life and things of the sort, what that means, right? That blackness is an excuse to get things, or grants you access to abundance in the context of the law, because that's not the case. But my senior year, it was the oceans topic. And so we dealt with the Middle Passage. And this was the year where I decided to be more intentional about learning about kind of history of blackness, just getting deeper into critical race scholarship, because during my era of debate, that wasn't that prevalent. It was more prevalent in college debate, but it was not as prevalent in high school debate. There weren't as many examples of black girls reading black girl arguments, or reading arguments about, structural anti-blackness, and I just did not have that roadmap in front of me for that many examples. There were some, but not that many. So it always felt like something that it just wasn't for me. Being a black woman, it wasn't for me. But yeah, I just had those conversations. I thought more critically about anti-blackness, slavery, and all these things. And it really started to give me a hindsight perspective on all of the transgressions, that I experienced from basically birth until, my senior year, and being like, I need to understand why I thought this way, or why I allow this, or why I prioritize these things. Like I will do not ever celebrate being called an Oreo anymore in 2021. I'm not ashamed of where, I come from. I understand more structurally how, neighborhoods are set up and why resources go into certain ways. I know that this is the last thing that I'll say, but I know that, and this was the large thing that I struggled with, of being the super Black person, right? I'm different. Bitch, no, you're not. I mean, my French. But like, no, you're not. There's a lot of really poppin' Black women, smart Black people across the spectrum of Blackness who do math, who do poetry, who write, who, unpack all of these mysteries of the world. I am not so special to dispel and remove my Blackness to do those things, to show that Black people are lit. They've been lit, and they will continue to be lit, and I have the honor of being part of that, tradition. So yeah, as I reflected upon my personal experiences with anti-Blackness and colorism, was a long answer, but that is the answer that I'll give.
It's a question that needs a long answer because there's a lot to it, and there's so much more that, unfortunately, our episodes are only so long. But That's why, again, like we asked when we came into this conversation, that everyone puts themselves in that mental place where it's like, okay, let me really think about my experiences, because just listening to you talk, it's like ironic, not necessarily ironic, but like there's a similarity between one point in the conversation, but in the last episode where I really talked about my journey in the conversation of being accountable in colorism and texturism, they're very different. Mm-hmm. So when you talked about debate, and it was the oceans topic, the last episode, I referred several times to there was this time me and my debate partner were also best friends, and we were debating about Black women, hypersexualization, and she just had this moment where she was like, okay, Abby, listen, I know we're talking about it, but we really need to talk about it. Yeah. And we're kind of walking around talking about, oh, this is what Black women go through, but our experiences are very different. Mm-hmm. And it was a moment where, for me, it was also on the oceans topic. So it's kind of interesting that debate topic created so many different experiences, right? Different awakening moments across the spectrum of Blackness. For me, it was a recognition of I have been ignorant in terms of how I present what Blackness, how my Blackness presents itself, right? When I'm talking about experiences, and I'm speaking in a very general tone as though it's an homogenizing experience, right? As though what my debate partner goes through is the same type of hypersexualization that I experience, or the same type of oppression that she experiences, then it really was doing more harm in terms of building up the Black community. Now, it was that narrative of suffering, right? That on the debate circuit, unfortunately, some people love. It becomes very digestible, not in a positive way, but some people are very oh, I'm so interested in this narrative of Black suffering. Who can face the most oppression, right? And it becomes trauma porn. But because I was so caught up in, oh, I'm beginning to understand critical race theory, I didn't think, oh, maybe there's different ways that I need to understand it for myself. Right. And that topic opened, that literal debate topic really opened that up for the start of me beginning to recognize my positionality, my experiences with colorism and texturism, privileges that I have, but also the ways that I have been ignorant when it comes to those privileges. And at times in a conversation, I've taken up more space than I should have taken up, especially on that topic, and especially with my debate partner. So I just thought that was
interesting. About that? like this feeling of taking up too much space. Like, what is that? You know, like, and I asked this like to you, but also probably to the person who is listening to this, of like, what does that mean really? Like, to take up too much space in the conversation of Blackness, things that Black folks go through, with you being, you know, Black, but having a different experience with that, given just like, you know, your racial makeup.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? What is that feeling? Unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, okay, so for the viewers, right, I'm doing this through the most, I guess, head-on analogy that I can give. So when I debated with a Black man, my senior, well, we were kids, my senior year, right, we were talking about specifically Black women, Black femme politics, and it was very common during his speeches for certain arguments to have me read those arguments. If it came to poetry, he gave me the space to read or perform that poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I never provided that space to my partner when we were talking about the ways that Black women are presented in society, especially when it came to conversations talking about the ways that Blackness in terms of skin color is viewed as like grotesque, is viewed as both something sexual and a type of hypersexualization that is also anti-Black, but then something that you also want to eradicate, right? So you become someone who is now able to be assaulted or raped because you are not able to have consent yourself, right? So in that conversation matters when we look at colorism, because there's different ways that hypersexualization presents itself. So one round that really speaks out to me as I got older was, we were debating two white women. They were talking about feminism, and they were talking about, we walk into a round and a judge told us that we're a 9.8, that we're so beautiful, and we felt like, why did you reduce us to our beauty? And my partner gets up and she's like, I walk into a round and I'm ignored. Nobody looks at me because they're too like grossed out by my presentation, by my existence to look at me. Mm-hmm. And I got up and used all the speech time for my time and was like, yeah, Black women, you know, we experienced this, that, and the third. And I took up space that was not my space to take up. Mm-hmm. Because that was a conversation that not only for just a round, but for her, she was talking about her experiences. And I tokenized her experiences as though it was something that I myself have experienced in that same way. Yeah. That doesn't mean that there's not times where, you know, people look at me sideways, where I feel unwelcomed, where I feel, you know, the white male gaze. As Black people, we all feel the white male gaze at some point in our lives, right? But I was not acknowledgeable that I need to step to the side and give space for someone else to, you know, talk about their experiences, to control the conversation, because this ain't my conversation to control.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I understand taking up space. In some ways, it presents itself in many different ways. So for you all, right, like viewers, it's not just when it comes to speaking, it comes to, you know, accountability, it comes to understanding, it comes to conversation, it comes to presentation, it comes to like physical presence, right? In that's almost like that callousness or carelessness with recognizing like, oh, maybe that's why I'm able to navigate spaces certain ways.
Right.
And just like we tell white people, hey, if you got privilege, you better use that privilege to make space for Black people, right? I mean, me and Tim Wise here. Hello, sir. What's going on? Right. But that still applies to lighter skin privilege as well. And we don't think, oh, maybe I need to use the benefits that I have to make space in different, like in white dominated spaces.
Yeah.
Is that kind of...
No, it makes sense. And I think like, this is a very honest, kind of like we're counting, because like you're saying words of like, you're tokenizing an experience. That's like not kind of aspects of Blackness and what that means, because you talking about, tokenization, taking up space, it just makes me really appreciate and feel like this space is open to actually have a conversation, because it is often the case that nobody wants to, acknowledge or say that, right? Like, hey, like, just structurally, some in predominantly white spaces, you have more access. Like there is more benefit of the doubt, or you're not seen in a particular way that is the same for how somebody who is darker. So like nobody wants to like say that. Everyone wants to be like, kumbaya, we're all in this together. All of our politics are affected and experienced the same. And so that affects the conversation, in my mind, where it's like, you don't feel as not safe to say what you want to say, but that it's almost pointless to say what it is that you want to say. And so that is what I really appreciate about the things that you're saying, right? Because it opens up okay, we're literally talking about our experiences, literally talking about the not perfect, but also just very human side of the conversation of colorism. And I think on the other end of it, so like from the, darker, but not dark skinned Black women, that there sometimes is the reaction to say, well, because you do not understand this experience, then you should say nothing about it, right? Like there is that. I've seen comments on other videos, not our videos, but on videos that kind of start to open up this topic, and generally not coming from, other light-skinned Black women, speaking, but just like from dark-skinned Black women talking about the lack thereof consciousness of lighter-skinned Black women. In the comment thread being like, yeah, this is why they, shouldn't be counted as being Black. They don't have our experiences. And then just like all of these different things. I think a large reason of this disconnect from the two sides, but once again, speaking from the side of like the darker skinned Black woman, is that there is that non feeling of comfort to understand where that person is coming from, to understand, the light-skinned Black woman, because, we're not talking directly about the things. We're not talking about, really, do you have more access in certain spaces and moments? Okay, you do. All right, so let's work from there. Let's build from there. Let's talk from there. And so I think it just becomes a cycle recreated of just like, we don't feel safe or feel seen in the conversation that is very much so about us. But this is part of the conversation about us, right?
Yes.
Like, it just is like, there cannot be an abandonment of individuals because of, how whiteness has kind of perpetuated a divide between Black folks. But we also can't ignore that there are these divisions, and therefore it requires, accountability. It requires, real conversations, real time. And it looks different. I think that another Black woman could say something different than me, right? About what is their comfort level when it comes to certain conversations, let's say about, sexualization and, power optics. Do they even feel comfortable with someone who either passes or has lighter features to have anything to say on the conversation when they are in the room, right? Like that, I think that Black woman has the right to feel that way. And that is just it has a lot to do with upbringing and just those personal experiences of colorism and anti-Blackness that has pointed that Black person to that point. But I'm different. I don't fully view it, or not view it. I think I view it the same way. My comfort level is different, right? My willingness to bridge and do the work is different. but it's not universal. And I think that that's where we all get stuck up, is that we want to make universal applications for how we can connect with each other, and that just never works, and it doesn't honor your feelings. It doesn't honor maybe your boundary. It's just your like where your boundary is for where you feel safe to have certain conversations, and with who is what it is. You're not wishing that person ill well. You're not, wishing them, death to their family, death. You're just saying, you know what?
Right.
I don't feel comfortable with this, and I want it to be acknowledged, but also no, that's the boundary. Yeah. That's it.
Yes.
There, done. So I really appreciate these conversations for that, and for the folks who watch, that like there is something for everybody and what we're talking about, but also to not take away that there is this universal kind of answer for how we all come together. I just think that like listen to each other and also acknowledge when you should sit down. And that's to anybody and everybody. There is always when it's your turn to sit down and shut up. Or there's somebody in your life. Because like I said, I'm not the darkest Black woman out here. And if I were to talk about like darker skin politics, like dark skin, I would not feel comfortable, having that conversation. I would not feel comfortable leading it or owning the dialogue on it, because it is simply not my experience to be of the darkest or darker shade. It's just not. It's, but am I Black? Heck yeah. Like I'm not light skinned. I'm not like, but once again, it's like this spectrum. And that's why it can't just be like, oh, these people aren't Black. Oh, or just like they shouldn't be talking, or they should be talking, and all this stuff. It's like, are we open to dialogue? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Are we open to respecting those boundaries, but also understanding that line of when we really, really should just shut up, learn, understand, and let those people have their space.
Yeah, completely. Okay, Jazmine, I'm so sorry. This part will have to be like snipped here. Do you want us, so we've been talking on my end, it looks like for like 30 minutes, a little more so far. Do you want us, we only did one question. What would you like us to do?
Let me go to because not me, Rand. I'll probably cut some of the stuff that I've been saying, to be honest. For purposes of efficiency. Let's see.
Because I do think the conversation, I think that was one of the ideas, was like this conversation is more, that's a guide for if like we run out of stuff. But the conversation was really authentic and just like real and honest. So I really feel like honestly everything that you've said adds to that comfort and value and like what we want from the episode.
Yeah.
Granted, I know like if you feel like there's something that you want to cut out, totally. But from my perspective, I'm like, this has been amazing. I just didn't want to make like an hour and a half long episode.
Right.
So I wasn't sure what you'd like us to do.
No, I think that's spot on. Of just like, this was a conversation, and as any conversations go, not everything that is scripted ends up being said. So I think that we can just like also say that, like you can say that for like this that will be recorded and put into the episode. That's like, y'all, we ran out of time, with like talking to Jazmine, but like,
got it.
The outline versus what happens. This is what happens. Conversation, and letting it just kind of naturally flow. But Black when I have to watch this. Yeah.
Would we like to?
The sexualization stuff is important. Do you think that? So, do you think that there is a way to have that conversation for a different episode tying something else in? Right? So like, talking about hypersexualization either from just like using a different entry point, and so kind of not moving us away from conversations of colorism. I think that those will always just be embedded in some conversations that happen. But now it's like, okay, we've done the kind of personal dialogue, talk about our experiences, understand the kind of politics of the, you know, producers and creators of TTNA. But now, you know, back to connecting this to things that people are seeing. So I'm sure we have 3,000 examples of.
And I really think the hypersexualization involves a lot of psychology, statistics, like it can easily be its whole own conversation. I can brainstorm a little bit as to what the topic will be about, like what's like our gateway, but it's brainstorming because there's so many possible entry points, you know, like what's just going to be the strongest one. But I agree. I think that would be good. And then maybe we can just jump in with like a, you know, y'all, like we have so much to talk about. We realize like there's more things and more episodes to be done. Right. Because there's so many tangents that colorism has to it, right? Yeah. And then a up next, but like together. And maybe the up next, like, so I guess the up next question is like, what is it that we really need to see like worked on? I'm not exactly sure what you think. Maybe like a question that allows for, again, a small dialogue, but to wrap it up as the up next.
I think that what you said prior to like this question is like the direction that we go. I think that we've just opened ourselves. I really don't think that there is a point to this episode, right? Like there's not a goal, but that, you know what I mean? Like we just think like we wanted to have a valuable conversation over the topic. We wanted to spend time kind of getting into different levels of it. But most importantly, we wanted to share, you know, aspects of ourselves with you all, so that you understand, you know, where we're coming from with just like the grander nature of, you know, all the episodes that TTNA rolls out, right? Because there might be, and there will be, you know, moments where, you know, in future episodes or when like, you know, as we grow and people start watching the OG episodes and they're watching the newer episodes, they might have questions of like, who is this person talking about Black women? Right. And like, it's like, well, that's why we filmed this stuff early on in, you know, the makeup of TTNA, because we wanted to answer that question. We wanted to show, you know, so I think that's kind of the vibe of this. Yeah. And lots of like, and now y'all see, here is what we do with this. It's like, nope, we just think that this is a good conversation and take what you will. We've shared ourselves. That's valuable. Okay.
Then I'll like start the closer and say like, yeah, there's not really an up next like that way, but then I'll throw it to you if you want to like delve into that a little bit, and then we can just like close it. Does that work? Huh?
I said I'll keep it short.
Hey, it's okay. It's your editing, so.
I mean, I know, so I'm gonna keep it short because I'm already like, dang, Jazmine, come on now.
No, this is great, but okay, cool.
All right.
Whew. Okay, y'all. So we are kind of running out of time, and I'm saying this so sadly because this conversation has been amazing, and that was the goal of this conversation, right? Was for us to come together to talk about our different experiences. And I really think there was like, for me, a really pivotal moment when it was like, dang, we debated on the same debate topic, but the opening or awakening moment it had for us was two entirely different experiences, two entirely different realities. Yeah. And that was the whole point, right? To come together and talk about like, yo, Blackness is not a monolithic conversation. And upon talking about colorism and texturism, there comes hard moments of accountability, hard moments of a recognition. And those moments don't always apply, right, to just recognizing, okay, I can benefit from privilege in certain ways. But Jazmine talked about how she had a moment where she was like, okay, you know what? No, like, I don't have to present myself in this certain way because that's not what like Black excellence is supposed to mean. For me, I had the experience of, damn, Abby, you sitting here, you know, harming someone who is your best friend because you're not being accountable and acknowledging these certain benefits and privileges that you have in different spaces. And rather you're just feeding off of her experiences, right? So I hope that, you know, as we were talking, there were moments where y'all were like, dang, okay, I relate to that. Or I experienced that. Or I know someone who may have represented like those similar actions or had those similar tendencies at a different point in time. But, you know, typically we kind of wrap up our episodes with like a, what's up next? You know, what are we doing to move forward? And I don't know, Jazmine, I just kind of think the goal was just, we think, you know, we hypothesize, we theorize, we try to just look deeper into our positionalities. I don't know if that's an accurate description, but
you know, I think that's exactly it. I don't think us kind of getting to the non-plan of this episode, because y'all, there was an outline, there was a sketch, Abby did that right, but sometimes what actually happens, like when you're having a conversation, the outline kind of goes to the wayside because the value that is happening outweighs the kind of sketch kind of beforehand, and that's what happened here. So we just think that displaying that real conversation and the value of it without trying to hit certain benchmarks of the conversation is better than any like prescription that we can provide, which, to Abby's point, there is not like a what do we do from here, like how, like what are some kind of thoughtful ways that you can engage. On my end, I think the point was just to be open and to share ourselves with you, because we're not going anywhere. More episodes are going to happen. More foolish behavior is going to pop up in the comments. And so we want to take moments of just sharing the kind of we are real people perspective that like are not perfect and are working through some things. And this conversation was us working through some things and showing how like we have worked through things in the past to get to where our, you know, standpoint or perspective is in the status quo. So just be open to this, take from it what you choose to, what doesn't serve you or doesn't, you know, add value to how you orient or engage in this conversation. All right, it's not for you in this point, or it's never going to be for you, and that is simply okay. We're not saying that, you know, oh, there's something wrong with your understanding of those things, because how could we say that when we're literally talking about experiences? Oh, your experience is wrong? I don't think that would, you know, read really well or make sense. So yeah, y'all, I hope that y'all enjoyed this and that there were moments that you felt spoken to, as Abby said, right, about your experiences and perspectives and things that you have gone through from childhood to now, that, you know, this conversation can enter into your living rooms, can enter into your classrooms, can enter into your personal conversations, and heck, share this, right? We've got an entire 3-part segment where something about this is going to connect with you, or something it could provide some type of roadmap for how to have this conversation in your life with the people who you love. And so, yeah, don't fear to, you know, shameless plug, subscribe to this episode. You know, a lot of great things are,
yes,
and to share these episodes, because they should be shared. There's a lot of value being put into these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Yeah, and I'm a, you know, second everything Jazmine said with share, subscribe, and hit the notification button, because as we mentioned, we barely touched the surface of the outline we had planned. So we have more episodes that are coming with some conversations about different tangents of colorism, because the goal I hope that, you know, we take from this conversation too in future episodes is that we recognize that this conversation is always in the background. This conversation is always shaping future dialogue that we're having. So even if we have an episode and you may not hear us say colorism or texturism, we recognize that this is part of the foundation to be able to have some of the conversations that we want to have, right? So subscribe, hit the notification button, follow us on Instagram, and feel free to send us an email. Feel free to leave comments. We really hope to see some positive comments, y'all, because there's some.
We need y'all to come. We need y'all over here because
yes,
my fingers cannot block fast enough.
I know.
How
please
much is
cut out
coming.
the ignorance, y'all. Please, we need y'all. But no, thank you all so much for tuning into the 8th episode. Again, every time I say what number we're on, I get so excited. But the 8th episode of TTNA. Thank you so much, Jazmine, for joining us again, taking time out of your LA, you know, trip to link up with us. I really appreciate it so much.
I enjoyed this. I always enjoy it. This is vacation for me, you know, having a conversation. That's what you have that during vacation. I just get to do it on the 50th floor.
Okay.
Let me stop. I am really not kidding. But yeah.
I love it. Okay, y'all. Well, I hope you all, you know, stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you again. And we will talk to y'all soon.
Peace.
No, you're doing this just for pleasure. Either learn me or I'm a lesson. If you want me.